I've seen a lot of people rush out for the cheapest 850 pair they can find, only to end up wishing they'd spent a little more when the image turns hazy after a few minutes on the trail. That budget regret moment is what keeps me cautious, especially with something as pricey as a pair of Leica binoculars. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So the question I keep hearing is, does the Leica Ultravid HD Plus actually feel like a smarter buy, or is it just another premium label with a matching price tag? When you're standing on a ridge watching a hawk wheel by, or trying to catch the faint glimmer of a distant lighthouse on a foggy night, the optics you choose become part of the experience. The 850 format is a classic sweet spot for long-range viewing. The 8 magnification lets you keep a steady image without the handshake that comes with 10, while the 50mm objective gathers enough light to stay usable in lower light conditions. That's the theory, but the reality hinges on how the lenses and prisms handle that light. Leica's claim to fame here is the Schott HT glass paired with phase-corrected roof prisms and a double coating system they call HDC and Aqua Dura. In plain language, that means the glass is designed to transmit more of the visible spectrum and the prisms are aligned to keep the image sharp and free of ghosting, while the coatings fight off water, dust, and the occasional smear you get from a sudden rain shower. I spent a weekend testing the Ultravid on 3 different outings: an early morning birding session in a pine forest, a dusk hike along a coastal cliff, and a full moon night drive to a wildlife preserve. The first thing that struck me was how quickly the image came into focus after I twisted the focus wheel. With the Schott HT glass, colors popped right away. Greens didn't look washed out and the sky retained that deep, slightly cooler tone you usually only see in higher-end gear. The phase-corrected roof prisms did their job, delivering a crisp edge on distant pine needles that would often blur into a smear with cheaper roof prism binoculars. On the pine forest birding run, I was hunting for a black-capped chickadee perched 300 feet up on a spruce. The 8 magnification gave me enough reach to see the fine feather pattern without the view jittering from my own hand. The Aqua Dura coating showed its worth when a light drizzle started, the lenses repelled the droplets, and I didn't have to keep wiping the front element. That's a practical strength you can't ignore if you plan on using these binoculars in unpredictable weather. The coastal cliff at dusk gave me a chance to test low light performance. The 50mm objective does a respectable job of gathering twilight photons, and the HDC coating helped preserve contrast as the sun dipped below the horizon. I could still make out the silhouettes of distant sailboats and a lone lighthouse beam that would have been a vague smudge in a standard 850 pair. The only downside I noticed was a slight loss of brightness compared with a 1042 model that has a newer extra-low dispersion glass, but that trade-off is part of the design decision. You get more light-gathering area at the cost of a marginally larger barrel. Nighttime wildlife spotting was where the Ultravid's practical limits showed up. With a full moon, the view was still usable, but the image wasn't as luminous as I'd hoped. The Schott HT glass does a solid job, but it's not a miracle worker in near darkness. If you plan to use binoculars primarily for stargazing or deep night animal tracking, you might feel the need for a higher magnification or a model with dedicated night-vision compatibility. That's a clear skip signal for night-only enthusiasts. So who should actually consider spending on these Leica 850s? If you're a serious birdwatcher, a field photographer who needs a reliable reference tool for spotting distant subjects, or an outdoor hobbyist who values a robust, weather-resistant build for frequent use, the Ultravid checks a lot of boxes. The combination of high-transmission glass and a roof prism system that's been fine-tuned by Leica engineers translates into a viewing experience that feels ready for the field straight out of the box. For someone who already owns a decent pair of 842 or 1042 binoculars and is just looking for a marginal upgrade, the price jump might feel steep, especially because the performance gains are subtle rather than revolutionary. On the flip side, if your primary use case is casual backyard watching, occasional concerts, or you're on a tight budget, there are many reputable brands that offer decent 850 models at a fraction of the cost. The Leica's main value proposition isn't just the specs, it's the confidence that the optics will stay consistent season after season, the minimal maintenance needed thanks to the Aqua Dura coating, and the brand cash that can sometimes make a difference when you're sharing images or videos with fellow enthusiasts. A practical weakness that's worth mentioning is the size and weight. At roughly 1.6 kilograms, they're not something you'll want to carry around all